Hello everyone, this is our first video about the bone. In this video we're going to discuss the types, structure and function of bone. So let's get started. Bones provide structural support and protection of body parts. For example, the rib cage protects the inside organs like the heart and the lungs from injury. The bones allow us to move. The bone marrow produces the blood cells of the human body. Also, the bone is a site of storage of minerals like calcium and phosphate. And also the bone is a site for storage of fat. There are various classifications about the types of bones. One of these classifications is their location inside the body. So the first location is the axial location, where the bones are located around the midline, the axis of the body. These bones include the skull, the rib cage, the sternum, which is inside here, the vertebral column. Some other bones are appendicular or located on the periphery of the body. This includes the shoulder bones, the upper limbs, the pelvis, and the lower limbs. Another way to classify the bones is according to their shape. So we have long bones like the femur. We have short bones like the carpal bones. We have flat bones like the bones of the skull. We have irregular bones like the vertebra. And finally, we have little sesamoid bones. The best example is the patella. These sesamoid bones are embedded within the tendons of muscles, and they function to reduce the stress on these tendons. You can also see these sesamoid bones on the thumb of the hand and the big toe of the feet. Now we're going to go through the major structures that forms the bone. The first structure is the periosteum. The periosteum is a membrane that covers the outer surface of all bones except the articular surfaces. So with the articular surfaces, there is no periosteum. The articular surfaces is what separates the bone from the other bone through a joint. The periosteum, importantly, has two layers. The first layer is the outer layer, and this layer contains mainly fibroblasts and fibrous tissue, and that's why it's the fibrous layer. This layer is mostly protective to the bone. The second layer is the inside layer, and this layer is cellular. It's called the osteogenic layer because this layer supplies the bone with fresh osteoblasts. These fresh osteoblasts are going to be very important in bone remodeling, which is the new bone formation after the bone breakdown. Without this layer, the bone remodeling cannot take place. Also, the periosteum contains nociceptive nerve endings. So when the periosteum is injured, we can feel pain. If there is a fracture or if there is injury to the bone, the pain you feel is because of these nociceptive nerve endings that supplies the periosteum. Also, the periosteum provides attachment to muscles and tendons. Also, the periosteum provides the blood supply to the bones through penetrating blood vessels. The second structure is the compact bones. The compact bones constitutes the hard outer surface of bones. If this is a long bone, the outer surface, the hard outer surface is mainly compact bone. So this compact bone is going to be covered from the outside by the periosteum and from inside by the endosteum. The word peri means around or from the outside. That's why it's called periosteum. And endo means from inside. That's why it's called endosteum or the inside layer. And inside here you have the bone marrow cavity. This compact bone is much more dense than the cancellous bone. That's why it's called compact. Compact means it's compacted or dense. It gives the bone its smooth, white, and solid appearance. As we said, it's covered by periosteum from the outside and endosteum from the inside. And it constitutes 80% of the total bone mass. Because it's heavy, obviously, because it's compact in comparison to the spongy bone. The rest of the bone is obviously spongy. The primary structural and functional unit of compact bone is called osteon. This is an image from the web that describes the structure of compact bones. So we can see here the compact bones makes the outer shiny white layer of long bones. And from inside we can see the medullary cavity. If we zoom in into a small piece of compact bone, you're going to see, first of all, you can notice the periosteum with its two layers, the outer fibrous layer and the inner osteogenic layer that keeps supplying fresh osteoblasts for bone remodeling, as we discussed. And then you're going to see these circumferential lamellae. The lamellae are basically the building units of compact bones. These lamellae are made of proteins and minerals. These lamellae can be oriented as circumferential lamellae here from the outside, or they can make concentric layers, as we can see here, and these concentric layers makes a structure called the osteon. So all these osteons together makes a compact bone. And you can see in the middle of the osteon we have this central canal that contains blood vessels and nerves. And you have these Volkmann's canals. These are the connecting canals between the central canals. This is a brief structure about the compact bones, or brief description of the structure of compact bones. And as you move into the inside of the bone, you will see the trabecular bone that makes the spongy bone starts to show up. And finally, you will have the medullary cavity inside. The next bony structure is called the trabecular bone. And it's called trabecular because the primary anatomical and functional unit of these bones is the trabecula. You can see this is a trabecula, this is a trabecula, this is a trabecula, this is a trabecula. These trabecula are made of concentric layers of lamellar bone, just like the osteon. But in contrast to osteons, they lack the central canal that contains blood vessels. These trabecula are arranged in a haphazardous, irregular way. They are not arranged in a regular way, and that makes a lot of pores between them. And that's why these bones are called cancellous or spongy, because they look like a sponge from the outside. All these pores are going to be occupied by the red bone marrow. We have two types of bone marrow. We have the red bone marrow, that's the more active, that's the bone marrow that produces blood cells, and the more inert or more inactive bone marrow, which is the yellow bone marrow, which is mainly located in the hollow surface or inside of the long bones. There is a high surface area compared to the volume. So there is a big surface area in these bones and the volume is less. And that's why it's less dense, it's more porous and weaker bone. The primary function of these bones is to absorb the stress. For example, if we stand, the feet and our legs is going to be exposed to a lot of stress. This stress is going to be absorbed by this trabecular bone, in contrast to the compact bone. I also want to point out that flat bones, small bones, and irregular bones are basically made of an outer layer of compact bone, which is obviously covered by periosteum, and from the inside there is this trabecular bone that's rich with red bone marrow. There is no medullary cavity like the long bones, for example. These flat bones, small bones, and irregular bones lacks a medullary cavity. Instead, there is this trabecular bone that's filling the inside with a lot of red bone marrow. Next structure is the bone marrow. We have two types of bone marrow. We have the red bone marrow and we have the yellow bone marrow. The red bone marrow is responsible for hematopoiesis, which is the production of blood cells like red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and lymphocytes. And it's mainly located within the spongy bone. This spongy bone itself is mainly located within flat, irregular, and small bones, and it's also located at the end of long bones. Like here, this is called the epiphysis of long bones. We're going to discuss that later, but this is a major location of this spongy bone and also the red bone marrow. The yellow marrow is mainly responsible for the storage of fat, and that's why it's actually yellow. It's yellow because of the presence of fat. And it's mainly located within the hollow regions of compact bones inside here. This is the hollow region of compact bones, and this is where you can find this yellow marrow. There is, with age, progressive conversion of red marrow into yellow marrow. Finally, we have the endosteum, which is this thin vascular membrane of connective tissue that lines the inner side of compact bone, separating it from the medullary cavity. So the very inner side of the compact bone, we will find the endosteum just before we reach the medullary cavity that contains the yellow marrow. So I want to review that with you guys shortly. So the long bones, we have the long bones first. So the outer surface of long bones is composed mainly of the compact bone, and it's covered from the outside by the periosteum. And then after this compact bone, there is a small thin layer of spongy bone. And after this spongy bone, you will find the endosteum. And then after the endosteum, you will see the hollow medullary cavity that will contain the yellow bone marrow. At the end of long bones, it's mainly composed of just spongy bone. And this is because its major function is to absorb the stress. For example, as we said, if we stand, the long bones has to absorb the stress of standing. So this is the function of this spongy bone. And within this spongy bone, you will see abundant red bone marrow. The structure of flat bones like the skull, or small bones like the carpal bones of the hand, or irregular bones like the vertebra, it's made of an outer layer of compact bone, and it's also covered by periosteum. And all the inside is filled with spongy bone and red bone marrow. There is no medullary cavity. And that's why the major source of red bone marrow is actually these flat bones, irregular bones, and small bones. Now let's talk about bone cells. The first and the most important of them are the osteoblasts. These are the bone-forming cells. They secrete a protein material known as the osteoid. This osteoid is rich in type 1 collagen. This is the major type of collagen present in bones, and this is a very high yield point. This osteoid is going to be mineralized later to form the hard bone. The osteoblasts will control the function also of the osteoclasts, which are the bone-eating cells. So the osteoblasts by themselves makes new bone, and they also control the function of the osteoclasts that are going to destroy the bone. The second type of bone cells are the osteocytes. They originate from osteoblasts that become trapped within the bony matrix, the osteoids, that they themselves made. So the osteoblast keeps laying down osteoid, and then they become trapped within this osteoid. They have nowhere to go. Now they are called osteocytes, and these spaces where they are trapped in are called lacunae. So they are located within spaces called lacunae, and they connect with other bone cells by processes called canaliculi. And this is through gap junctions. This is the canaliculi of the osteocytes. So in this image, we can see that this is an osteon. You can see these osteocytes that are trapped within their own bony matrix, and they connect with each other through these canaliculi, and they are located within spaces called lacunae. The third and last type of bone cells are the osteoclasts. These are the bone resorbing or dissolving or eating cells. These are large multinucleated cells, and they're derived from the monocyte stem cell lineage, so they have a phagocytic activity. They secrete acid which dissolves the minerals, which is called hydroxyapatite, and they also secrete proteolytic enzymes that breaks down the collagen and the other proteinaceous material. They are largely involved in bone remodeling, and their function, as we said, is mainly controlled by the osteoblasts. They cannot function without osteoblasts. A quick review of long bones. The long bones are divided into epiphyses, metaphyses, and diaphyses. The ends of long bones are called epiphyses. These are the rounded ends of long bones. They are rich in red bone marrow because, as we said, they are full of trabecular bone, and the red bone marrow fills the spaces or the gaps between the trabeculae of spongy bone. And they are covered by articular cartilage, like here. This is the articular cartilage that's going to connect it with another bone. And then the metaphyses, which is the part here that connects between the epiphyses and the diaphyses. The metaphyses is the growth plate in children. This is where children will grow in length. The growth plate is what allows children to grow in length. And this growth plate or the metaphysis is going to be rich in blood supply. It's going to be heavily supplied by blood vessels, and that's why it's a big site or a major site of osteomyelitis because of the spread of bacteria from the blood, and also tumors in young children because of the high turnover in this area. This is a very high yield area that will explain to you why a lot of the tumors in children happens in the metaphysis. The long part of long bones or the shaft of long bones is the diaphysis. This is made mainly of cortical bone surrounding the bone marrow, as we discussed previously. Beside bone cells, there is also the extracellular matrix, which is called the osteoid. This is synthesized by osteoblasts, and it's a protein material composed mainly of type 1 collagen, which is the major type of collagen present in bones, and glucosaminoglycans. It becomes mineralized by hydroxyapatite. This hydroxyapatite is mainly made of calcium and phosphate. So 30% of the extracellular matrix is organic material, which is collagen and glucosaminoglycans, and 70% is inorganic, which is the salts or the calcium and phosphate. Collagen gives the bone its tensile strength. Tensile means when you stretch it, it's able to go back to its normal position. It doesn't like go away. While the hydroxyapatite gives it its compressive strength. So when you compress the bone, it doesn't fracture. This extracellular matrix is going to be subject to changes in nutrition, age, and degree of mineralization. So the constituent of this extracellular matrix, or this 30%, 70% ratio, is subject to change depending on the nutrition, depending on the age, depending on the degree of mineralization, which is dependent itself on a lot of factors like hormones and other factors. Microscopically, there are two types of bones. There is the woven bone, and that's the weak bone. And this is a haphazardous arrangement of collagen fibers. So the osteoblasts produce osteoid too rapidly, too quickly. And this happens usually in fetal life and in adults after fracture. Remember, I don't want you to confuse woven bone with trabecular bone. Trabecular bone is made of regularly laid concentric lamellae. While woven bone, the collagen itself is haphazardly arranged. So it's a very weak bone. It's present in fetuses and in adults after fracture, and it's going to be replaced later with the lamellar bone. So the lamellar bone is the strong bone. This is regular parallel alignment of collagen fibers into sheets. So the collagen is in a parallel alignment that makes this strong layers of lamella. And this will replace the woven bone both in fetuses and after fracture, and the thing is, its production is slower compared to the woven bone. So here as a quick review, if we take a piece of spongy bone and we enlarge it here, you will see these trabecula. These trabecula, or each trabecula, consists of a concentric lamella. These are the concentric lamella that meets each trabecula, just like compact bone, just like the osteons of compact bone, but without the presence of a central canal. These trabecula absorb the mechanical stress. Now you can contrast trabecular bone with compact bone. Here in compact bone, there is no spaces, so everything is compact, everything is dense. As we can see, if we take a small piece from this compact bone, you will see from the outside the two layers of the periosteum, and then after that, there are the circumferential lamella, and then when the lamella are made or arranged in a concentric manner, they make up the osteons, and in the middle of the osteon you have the central canal with the blood vessels and the lymphatics, and then connecting these central canals together we have these perforating canals called Volkmann canals, and then from the inside you can see the presence of spongy bone, and then the endosteum, and then the medullary cavity. Finally, this is a summary of the components of bone. The bone is made of cells and made of extracellular matrix. The bone cells are osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. The extracellular matrix composed of organic material and inorganic material. The organic material are type 1 collagen and glucose aminoglycans, while inorganic materials are mainly salts, mainly calcium and phosphorus. All these together form lamella. If these lamella are concentric and compact together, they form the osteons of compact bone. If they are haphazardly arranged into trabeculae, they make the spongy bone. This is the end of our first video about the bone. In the next video, we're going to discuss bone remodeling. Thank you all for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. And also check our Facebook page, Medical Boarditis, for more interactive material. See you next time.